Welcome to the morning call for Monday, the 23rd of February. Today I'm going to start with the news and how news affects markets. And as a technical analyst, generally speaking, the chart represents everything that everyone knows about the market. But you do get these shocks. And we've got this Monday morning, a lot's been happening on tariff uncertainty that was ruled in the US on Friday. We've seen tariffs going to nothing, to 10%, back to 15% potentially. So that's been an interesting part of the news. Markets are still waiting to see what's going to happen in the Middle East with Iran, and that uncertainty is certainly having an effect on oil prices. And then we're seeing this big cold snap spell emerging in the US. And the interesting thing is, markets closed on Friday, and we've started on Monday with that coming in as a much bigger thing than forecast. So that then just has an effect. So when we look at the markets, that's the key thing. And so are the tariffs having an impact on the dollar? Is this new news having any impact? And we did see very much this move down. That's the reactive move. And the key point is where we move to. So we've moved to a level that's taken that new news into account. That's finding support on the lagging line on the cloud on the 60-minute. This is the short-term chart, the 60-minute. So the interesting thing is, will we go lower? So is the market's taking this in its stride, but will we go lower? That's going to be the big question for currency. So we're just seeing the dollar having had a good week last week and just making a slightly higher level than that previous level. But when we come back to the medium-term chart, we are seeing this potential for a sideways range, which way we're going to break. And of course, the longer-term chart, when you look at that chart, we are gradually heading lower, and we got this downside target activated. We need a new high to activate this upside target. So that's, if you like, the macro reaction to what we're seeing. And consequently, most other currencies are rising just against that dollar move. Bitcoin is down a further 2.7%. We do have an upside target that's not activated. That would turn from orange to green if we had a new high above 70,700. But the reality is we've got a big downside candle today. And if we look at the short-term chart, we can see, similar to that picture of the dollar, we've got that downside move, reactive move. If we move to a new low, we activate a downside target 10% lower to 58,000. So that's what we're to watch. If you're trading Bitcoin, watch the 1 minute targets. They're going to be really fascinating. So the NASDAQ, still waiting to see if we activate this downside target. That will turn from orange to red if we get a new low below about 24,500. We're seeing the futures. They have been lower. They're just recovering a little bit this morning. But we're seeing the US futures down 1/3%. So it does suggest the US market will open slightly lower. No change on the FTSE. Still looking pretty strong on the chart, all the way heading to that target, looking much stronger than the US. Whether we'll reach that target, if we see problems with the US markets, then that is going to curtail European markets. We're seeing an interesting situation on the DAX where the future is down, but the cash is up. So that's really quite interesting as well. We're seeing the Hong Kong market is open after the Chinese New Year close. And looking at that medium-term chart, it's a mixed picture. We did move slightly higher, but we've now got a new downside target. So it's just, when you see those multiple targets like that, that's a mixed picture. India looking quite strong. Sensex still has upside targets, but we are a bit range bound there as well. And the Aussie market just failing at that previous high. So stocks just struggling in Oz to break that high. If we look at the 60-minute chart, we do have upside targets, but they're not yet activated there. Now, Brent crude is down 2/3%. We have gone bearish in our morning call out to clients this morning. US nat gas has jumped on that New York freeze. Northeastern US going to demand more gas. So we are seeing, but it's not massive. It's not like what we saw in January where we had that freeze right across the states. But we are seeing a reactive move there, no big surprises. We were seeing European gas lower, down 4% at the open, but it is recovering off that low. And again, if you're any of these charts, you want to be looking at the 1 minute targets. That's what's going to give you clues, and you can do that on any chart where you have that data. Gold. Looking at gold here, we are up, and that is the short-term chart. Looking at the daily chart, the interesting thing here is we've made potentially the higher low, at the higher low, and now today we're making the higher high with 5,146. Those of you who watch charts today will know that I've been saying 5,100 is the level on gold, so that is quite a bullish thing to break that 5,100 level. It's a bit like an ascending triangle pattern. I did do a poll on LinkedIn. 70% of the participants in the poll believe gold will make a new high this quarter. So quite interesting just to see that sentiment. And we're seeing silver having activated a big upside target. Again, it is breaking higher, but not yet breaking fully the price pattern. Those little upside targets met. So that's really quite key. A lot of people were worried about bond yields and the reaction to the tariffs changes, but we're not seeing any great moves here. And in fact, there was an upside target that's been negated because that move has been unwound. On the 30-year, we still see the target is in place. It occurred later on the 10-year, and it's actually been taken off. Looking at the Mag 7, because this is really the key thing for global equities. There's so much money invested in the Mag 7. We saw Amazon still below the cloud there. Alphabet were up significantly on Friday, so their uptrend continues, finding support on the cloud. You just really can't ignore that. And of course, Nvidia, we're still watching. Will we break that 170 level to the downside, or the 195 level to the upside? And that target would turn green if we do that. But Nvidia's high was back in October, so that is slightly concerning. And if we look at just looking at the Dow, we had a lot of green on the screen on the Dow on Friday, so it just tells us that it was a pretty strong end to the week there, and we have seen some pretty big moves, especially seeing stock rotation into industrials. This one's 3M, multiple upside targets, looking very strong there. If we look at the Nasdaq, we saw Alphabet was the strongest performer, up 4%. There's two stocks in Alphabet, the A and B shares, both up, winning the table there. And if we look at the LSEG this morning, the winning stock at the moment is JD Sports, up 6%, not really changing the chart that much, that move. So that's really quite significant. Looking at the shorter term, we had downside targets. There's a big reactive move there, probably news driven, who knows. But the point is, the key thing is we are seeing that retail generally looking a bit better. Burberry, a lot of a mixed picture here. You've got to really look at the stocks that have that clearer level of targets. But it's generally speaking, it's the industrials that are performing well. You see here Smiths Group, that's performing well. But if you get down to, we look at and we're back to seeing the resource stocks, which have been fantastic, of course, with that move in metals. So that's quite key. And looking at the worst performers, well, we're seeing some of the ones that have been performing well just pulling back. BAE Systems, that's the medium-term chart. And we look at the long-term weekly chart, still amazing looking chart. So you just have to decide what's your time horizon, and how much you want to live with these changes. And even on the short-term chart, even though we're down today 1%, we do have good upside. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.